To the shots fired, body cam breakdown. With technology on the rise, law enforcement agencies are adopting these tools to help lower crime and bring criminals to justice.
In today's video, it's going to show this technology in action as it's used to help apprehend one desperate suspect as he thinks he can outrun and outhide a police canine.
On February 17th, 2024, at around 2:50 p.m. in the city of Los Angeles, a patrol unit's automated license plate reader detected a stolen silver Lexus occupied by a solo male at the intersection of San Vicente Boulevard and Fairfax Avenue. Officers advised over the radio that they are following a Code 37 vehicle. Code 37 is a radio code for a stolen vehicle. The officers radio for additional officers in an air unit along with a supervisor. Before additional officers could arrive in the area to assist, the suspect immediately turned into a neighborhood and accelerated at a high rate of speed to elude officers. The officers activated their emergency license siren, but the suspect refused to stop and led officers on a short pursuit that came to a quick stop when the suspect collided head-on into another vehicle.
Southbound Crenshaw on duty to RA.
Hey! Clear the car!
Correction, Curson. 717 unit RA.
70 Walker, I have a suspect running. Can you tell me where the house is? How's it good? Hey, don't clear. Where'd he go? Get back here! You almost out.
The suspect exits the stolen car and runs from officers. He runs up a neighbor's driveway and over the fence into their backyard. Officers stop pursuing the suspect, ask for additional resources and a canine to respond to help search for the individual.
We are searching for a suspect and are preparing to use a police dog. For your safety, please go inside your home or business and stay inside until we have completed our search. To the person or persons who are hiding from the police, make your location known to us immediately. Put down all weapons, come out with your hands raised, and follow directions. If you do not, a police dog will be used to find you. When the dog finds you, do not move or you may be bitten. You have 1 minute to surrender.
You can hear the police giving announcements in both English and Spanish over the loudspeaker. This is to notify the suspect that failing to surrender and comply may result in a canine biting them. This announcement is given before a canine deployment to give the suspect the opportunity to safely surrender without force being used. In this case, the suspect refused to safely surrender and comply with those announcements. The canine was used to search the backyard of a residence where the suspect was located and bit. The suspect wrestled with the canine as officers approached. Once the canine was called off the bite, the suspect immediately fled for a second time and escaped officers by jumping over a fence into another backyard.
250, let me know when your position try to start. What? Turn around! Turn around! Here, here, go! He's over it! Hang tight, hang tight. We can get. On the ground. Get on the ground. On the ground. Okay, just put in a holster. Just put in a holster. You're gonna handcuff. On the ground. On the ground. You ready? Bro, don't move. Don't move. I'm not even ready to go crazy. Don't move. On the ground. On the ground. There you go. All the way down. Get on the ground. All the way down. Turn around. Turn around.
The LAPD air unit continued to orbit overhead and tracked the suspect into another backyard where a second canine search team was able to take the suspect into custody. The suspect was transported to a local hospital and treated for his injuries. He was identified as Ian Jimenez. Ian was booked in the Los Angeles County Jail for felony evasion from a police officer, driving a stolen vehicle, felony hit and run causing injury to another, 2 counts of entering a dwelling without owner's permission, and petty theft.
Wow, there is a lot going on in this video. A suspect fled from officers in a stolen car, short pursuit, gets in a head-on collision, runs from officers, gets bit by a canine, runs again. We got helicopters, perimeter set, and then the suspect's taken into custody. There's a lot to talk about this, so let's break it down from the start.
Yeah, let's talk about the technology and how this guy was actually even caught in the first place. We mentioned in the beginning, technology is playing a huge role in law enforcement today. We all know that hiring cops today is very difficult to do. Most departments are low staff. Technology has not replaced cops, but it's actually assisted in apprehending criminals. And in real time, using cameras, we can get license plates, suspect descriptions, put officers in a particular area just based on people monitoring cameras in real time. So, and in this case, they have a camera attached to the police vehicle license plate reader. And what that does is just an automatic reader that scans every license plate that goes by, and it'll actually detect and tell dispatch and the officers in the car if a vehicle is stolen, if the person's a wanted felon, all sorts of different things. And in this case, it told the cops that the car that they had scanned was stolen. It's important that the officers run that license plate through dispatch or their MDT to confirm that that license plate of that vehicle is actually stolen, because sometimes it is technology and it can be off or wrong. So in this case, they do that, determine that the car is actually stolen, they get behind it, and then they actually start asking for additional resources to come help them before they commit themselves to the actual felony vehicle stop.
I like how they did that because they knew it was a stolen car, and you've got to get resources to you as quick as possible. Immediately getting on the radio, identifying what you have, and asking for those resources. That way they can start heading your way in the event the suspect actually decides to ditch the car and flee. And in this case, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, and so if you go back and watch some of the video, when the officers are actually just following the car before they've even activated their emergency lights, while they're waiting for backup, the guy is actually using his blinker, he's obeying the laws, and he's switching lanes. This is a common tactic that suspects use to see if the cops are actually following them. So if you go back and look, he's using his blinker. He doesn't want to violate any traffic laws to bring attention to himself. But in the back of his head, he knows that there's a cop behind him, so he's doing this purposely to see if that cop is going to switch lanes with him. And a lot of times these suspects will ditch or divert into a parking lot as soon as possible, or in this case, he actually turns down into a neighboring street. And as soon as he sees the cop following him down that neighborhood, he knows the gig is up and that the cop's following him. And then that's initially when he takes off and this little short pursuit takes place.
So that leads into the pursuit portion, and we're going to talk about the mindset. Getting in a pursuit is inherently dangerous, and really having the mindset and processing what's happening and why someone is fleeing. Knowing the time of day, in this case, it's in the middle of the day, it's in a residential neighborhood, there's people that are out on the street, and that suspect takes off. It's making sure you know where you are, where you're going, how many resources you have, and then why is this suspect fleeing? Well, we know it's a stolen car, but maybe there's other things that were involved in this. Maybe another crime was committed prior to that. So having the mindset, what are some other things you think about when you're in a pursuit with your mindset?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think it comes down to the time of day, how much traffic is on the roadway, what it is that you're actually chasing, and what is the suspect's mindset? How reckless are they driving? What is the danger to the public? And in California, all this stuff, in most states, it's in law that you have to take all of that into consideration while you're chasing somebody. So here, this pursuit doesn't last that long. The guy can't negotiate a turn well enough, and he ultimately crashes head on into a victim's vehicle, which is the worst case scenario. Fortunately, he wasn't going fast enough to cause great or a lot of injury to the occupants of that car, He does cause minor injury to them, but you see in the video, the guy that he hits gets out of the car and he's completely confused of what's going on. The suspect actually gets out of the car and then runs from the police. Now, oftentimes cops get caught chasing the rabbit, and that can become very dangerous because they're gonna wanna bypass that suspect's car to chase after the bad guy. They do a good job in this video. They actually call it out, hey, clear the car, meaning make sure that that car is clear and that there's nobody else inside that car. The airbags possibly could have been deployed. You can't see clearly inside that vehicle. So checking to make sure that there isn't any other occupants is vital. They do that, and then they continue to chase the suspect, who ultimately jumps over the fence into the neighbor's backyard, and that's when they stop giving chase, set a perimeter, they know their limitations, and they start asking for their resources. Canines, helicopters, more officers, and they really do a good job of setting up containment in that neighborhood.
Well, we often talk about SIPA, contain, identify, plan, and act. In this case, it's a little bit out of order, and we always talk about how it continuously evolves in constant communication. They've identified what they have. They have a stolen car and a suspect fled from them. So now they need to work on the containment, the C portion of SIPA, which they had a lot of discipline in doing that. That officer you saw jump the fence a little bit to look and then realize, okay, we need to set a containment, and then they did. And the containment happened pretty quick. And the portion of the containment is you're setting corners on the streets and you're bringing additional resources in to make sure that suspect stays in that perimeter and doesn't get out of it. Then you can slow things down, and then you start the planning portion, which is where the canine team came in to start searching. So Kyle, you were a canine handler for many years, and you were the sergeant and you ran the canine team. So can you walk us through the canine portion and what happened in this?
Yeah, so as a canine handler, when you're showing up to something like this, and in this case, he's late to the show. He doesn't know exactly what's going on. So it's crucial for the canine handler to ask as many questions as possible, right? What is the want of this person? You know, what the totality of everything going on? Because that's going to dictate whether or not you can even use the dog to search for this suspect. So one of the things that is vital to do, and if you're a cover officer out there and you're assisting a canine in a search, you need to contact the homeowner of the house that this person actually jumped into. And the reason you need to do that is because you want to check, hey, do you have any animals? Do you have any animals that are outside? Is there anybody that's supposed to be in your backyard? You know, who all is home? All these questions, so that when you release that dog into a backyard, you're not blindly releasing a dog into a yard that could potentially bite somebody, hurt another animal, get into a dog fight. All those things you have to take into consideration. So talking to the homeowner, figuring out what exactly is going on inside that home, and then ensuring them that they need to stay inside, lock their doors, stay away from their windows, because you don't want them coming to the window to see what's going on and then distracting the dog. So we always tell people, stay away from the windows.
Well, I think that really started when those officers, and you can hear it, they were actually giving loud announcements through the patrol car's loudspeaker. They were saying in English and Spanish, notifying the public there's someone that could potentially be in their backyard, to lock your doors, lock your windows, and stay away from that. So they're letting the public know like something is going on for their safety to stay inside, but they're also giving commands to the suspect to peacefully surrender. And they're doing that because they don't want to use force. They would rather that suspect hear those announcements and come out. So that's what they did first. And I like how you actually mentioned that, because there's oftentimes we watch videos where it looks like the canine is just searching the backyard. But you're saying before they even make entry into a backyard that they're contacting the homeowners. So they're getting the permission to know that there's no homeowners in the backyard.
Yeah, and look, here's the thing. Nobody wants to actually go and look for somebody that's hiding from you, right? Because you don't know if that person's lying in wait. You don't know if he's armed with a gun. So actually having to physically go find somebody in an area you're unfamiliar with, that's a scary thing to have to do. And so that's why we try to bring those people out to us. So by utilizing the dog, you can put the dog first before you're actually putting an officer. And the dog's nose is, hundreds and thousands of times stronger than a human. So that's why we utilize the dog. You can see that the handler in this video releases the dog off lead, goes down the side of the house, and then turns a corner, and a few seconds go by, and the suspect actually exits that house simultaneously as that dog comes around the corner, and then he bites him. What was interesting to note was the fact that you've got two other contact officers with that canine handler as they're going into that backyard. If we're talking about the roles and responsibilities of cover officers with the canine handler, if you're the cover officer, you want to make sure that you're up with the handler because you're his lethal force, right? His complete objective and goal is to be paying attention to that dog, looking at the dog's behavior, his cues and things that the dog is going to put off in case he alerts to the bad guy. So if you're the cover officer, make sure you're with your canine handler, you're right up with them, and you've got your lethal force out. When the dog physically goes on the dog bite, it's preferred that the officers that are on scene communicate with each other. So if I'm the dog handler and my dog is now on the dog bite, I would communicate with you as the cover officer. You grab the suspect, I'm gonna grab my dog. Meaning I would physically grab the dog by his collar. You would physically grab the control of the suspect. And if more oftentimes than not, you have a suspect who's gonna surrender when they're being bit by a dog because it hurts, we would then pull that dog off physically, remove him from that situation with control, and the cover officers would then detain that person in handcuffs. So the entire time you have physical control over the suspect. Here in this video, the handler decides to verbally call the dog off, which poses a couple different risks. One, the dog could come off and inadvertently bite one of the cover officers because he's jacked up. Two, and in this case, the suspect actually gets up and runs from the officers again and actually gets over another fence into another neighbor's backyard, which is now a whole other problem. So calling a dog off verbally is, I think, few far situations that you would do that. Times that I would do that would be if somebody's in a structure, dog is inside, you can't see exactly what's going on. You don't want to insert yourself into that structure or that closed space. You would call that dog out to you. And quite frankly, if that bad guy didn't want to come out after being bit by the dog, I'm not going to go re-engage the dog or go in there myself. I'm going to start using other tools to get that person out of that structure. Gas, pepper balls, maybe a 40 mil, things like that. But once someone's been bit by a dog and they don't want to come to you, that should be a red flag and that's a problem. So those would be the few times that I would verbally call a dog off.
Well, I thought what was wild in this, and I have never seen it my whole entire career, is that suspect was bit by the canine, he got up, and then he ran again from the dog and those officers. Have you ever seen that?
I never have. No, honestly, I thought about that and I watched that, and that's pretty shocking. You can see that the suspect, he bites the dog in the face and he's actually gets the dog in a headlock. And this is pretty common for suspects to do things like that when your dog is on a bite, right? People have to, imagine if you're being bit by a dog, that's a lot of pain that you're in. And so most of the times I think suspects are trying to get away from that pain. They want to disassociate themselves from the pain that they're enduring, which is coming from the dog. So that's why you see people pushing dogs' mouths away and stuff like this. But in this case, he actually physically bites the dog in the face prior to the handler pulling him off. But the fact that this guy was just bit by that dog, he's literally screaming in pain. He's telling the handler his dog is ripping his arm off. He then chooses to run again. That blows my mind because he knows that dog is right there and he could very easily have been bit for a second time. Fortunately for him, the handler took the dog around the side of the house and I don't think the handler saw exactly what was going on until it was too late.
Well, I think that brings up, we talked about our own mindsets when you're getting in a pursuit, but the suspect's mindset, it shows how determined this suspect was. He was willing to run from a vehicle accident, jump the fence. He was bit by the canine, saying it's ripping his arm off. His mind was telling him to bite the canine, which you're putting your face right next to that canine's face.
Yeah.
And then he runs and he breaks into 2 different houses. And if you didn't notice, when he fled from the car, he was wearing a white shirt and gray pants. He came out when he was taken into custody the second time in a total different outfit. So it just shows the mindset that this guy was determined to get away. And after he was taken into custody, or during the custody portion, you could see he was still not cooperating with officers. You had a canine there, 2 officers with their pistols pointed at them, and another officer there ready to handcuff him, and he still was not complying. It's wild, this guy's his actual mindset to get away.
Yeah, I think it's important to take note too. If you're chasing a bad guy and you're putting out his physical description along with his clothing, that's a good case in point. This guy exits the house wearing blue pants and a blue long sleeve shirt when before he was wearing a white shirt and gray pants, completely opposite. So it's important for cops to understand, just because you were told that what this person was wearing maybe 1 minute ago might be wearing something completely different. And we see that stuff all the time when suspects flee from us. They strip their clothing off. Or in this case, you got into a house and put completely new clothing on. So it's important to recognize, pay attention to everything that's going on around you. Otherwise, that guy or somebody could slip right past you.
Yeah, and considering when you put out that description, if you can get the description of what the suspect's hair looks like, if they have any type of facial hair, and then really the shoes. Generally, suspects don't change their shoes. They change and ditch clothes, but not their shoes. So hair and shoes, trying to point that out as well. So always being vigilant. This is a case in point. Within a matter of minutes, he had broken into 2 houses, was bit, and he had changed his clothes.
Yep. So there was a lot going on in this video.
Yeah.
This did happen in the city of Los Angeles. The LAPD has thousands of police officers on hand and probably hundreds at any given time to help them out. But I don't want officers who work at smaller or medium-sized agencies to be dissuaded or thinking that they can't accomplish the same mission, which is to catch a suspect safely. I think even if you're at a smaller or medium-sized agency, you can still accomplish the same thing. You can still wait for resources. I think if you set up containment really early on, that's all you really need to do. And then start getting your pieces in place to then go and look for these people. It is inherently dangerous to go search for a suspect that is hiding from you. There's no safe, there is no complete 100% safety to it. You can only do that by mitigating the risk and liability as much as possible. And I think in this video, they did a really good job doing that.
Yeah, they did. There was a lot going on, a lot of talking points, a lot of things to take away from this one.
It's a dangerous job, and our roles as police officers is to make the public as safe as possible. And when you have a person like this who's willing to do the things he did to get away, our job is to make it as safe as possible, not only for the suspect, but for the citizens and the public and community, as well as the officers involved. So it was a good video to break down. Thank you guys for watching today's video. We'll catch you guys on the next Body Cam Breakdown.